Hey, super friends. It's a very exciting week out there in the Geek History Lesson Mind University land because my book, Super Soldiers, A Salute to the Comic Book Heroes and Villains Who Fought for Their Country, comes out this very week or far, far in the past, depending on if you're listening to this 50 years in the future. I'm super excited about this book. This is my book where I explore the history of comic book characters that have served in the military, characters like Beetle Bailey, characters like Captain America, characters like Green Lantern Hal Jordan, Captain Marvel, the Carol Danvers version, not the Shazam version, and so many, many more. And I compare them to my personal experience in the military. It is available to buy on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and more. Please, if you love this podcast, I know you're going to love this book. And also, I have a signing at Earth 2 Comics in Sherman Oaks, California on Saturday, June 22nd from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Just to repeat that, at Earth 2 Comics in Sherman Oaks, California on Saturday, June 22nd. So come see me and support the book. Buy it in person or buy it online, guys. I worked really hard on this book. I think it's pretty good, and so do a lot of awesome creators like Dan Jurgens and Benjamin Percy, Brad Meltzer, Dan Aykroyd, the Ghostbuster himself. They all love it as well. So I think you're going to love it too. I'm very proud of it. Super Soldiers available on Amazon and everywhere where books are sold right now. And now to the show.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When you listen to the show, we'll decide the best Pixar movies, don't you know? 'Cause we're Geek History Lesson, my good friend, and you got a friend in me.
Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Jason.
You got a friend in me.
Inman.
Welcome to the Mind University because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character constructor, Randy Newman from popular culture, and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour, except this week because we're doing a list.
Yes, we have a lot of fun doing lists on this show. And this week, to tie into the release of Toy Story 4, or as I like to call it, Toy Story 4, Too Many Damn Toys. I mean, really, have you seen the trailers of this movie? There are so many toys.
I've seen the movie, in fact.
Oh, actually,
so have you.
We both have seen the movie. At the time of this recording, we've both seen the movie. That is correct. They have too many toys. There's so many toys.
Yeah.
It should be called Toy Store.
Sure.
All right.
I think that's what we got in the second movie.
So today, to celebrate that, we are going to give our top 5 Pixar movies. This, of course, is not an objective list. This is our personal favorites. And we knew that we could not talk about Pixar without a guest.
That's right.
Well, Ashley, our guest is a pink plastic piggy bank. Hello, pink plastic piggy bank.
Voiced by Norm from Cheers.
Cliff Clavin himself.
Yeah, Brando's going to love it.
No, that's incorrect. Today, we thought we were going to talk about such a luminary company such as Pixar. We needed an amazing animator to join us on the show. Our guest today is an Emmy award-winning artist and animator. He is a Mind University student known for his work on Green Lantern, the animated series, Guardians of the Galaxy, the animated series, Ben 10, many other shows, including Extreme Ghostbusters.
Very timely.
Please welcome to the show a good friend of ours, Thomas Perkins. Thomas, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always fun to listen to your show, and to be a part of it is actually pretty exciting for me. So there you go.
We have several of Thomas's art books and collections here in our home, so I think the admiration is going to be mutual today.
Well, Thomas is a guy that you can always usually find at San Diego Comic-Con. He usually has a booth he's selling art. Will you be at San Diego Comic-Con this year?
Alas, no.
Oh, no.
Alas, no. I'm be very busy actually working on a comic. Hopefully, we'll get that done this next couple months, and then I will be on to other things. But as much as I'd like to be there, that's not in the cards this year.
That's even better.
Bother Thomas about his comic online, and then he can come back on Geek History Lesson and talk about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, Thomas, I want to ask you, because, the fans on the internet, they will ask, what would you say are your animation bona fides? Like, what do you do in animation? What have been some of your jobs in animation? Because I'm going to call you right now. You're an expert in animation. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, you're very kind. I've been working in the animation industry for about 23 years now, predominantly as a character designer, but I've also done prop design. I've done color work and other things like that, but predominantly for character design.
Now, just for the layman, can you explain what a character designer on an animated show is?
Surely. So we'll get a script at the rough stage, and it'll have a list of various and sundry things that happen. And during the course of that, we'll determine, okay, they need a villain, they need a mass of screaming people to run in fear of a giant kaiju, for instance, or the like. And then we'll do initial pass of rough designs to give to the storyboard artists so they can tell the story, make sure they have a continuity of their design so they don't have like Captain so-and-so changing from artist to artist as the different board guys tackle it. When they're done with their process, we then go over the storyboard and look for any additional characters that need designing or props or changes to the characters, like they get wet, they catch on fire, whatever. And then we then go and fill out the rest of the design pack. And then we send that to checking. They make sure we haven't missed anything. And then they'll send that to the animation team, who will then take all those drawings and then make everything actually dance and move and fight monsters and what have you. And it's sort of like the dream job that if you didn't go into comics and you're a comic book nerd, you get to go and do that kind of thing and create all these vast tracts of people to go and have adventures and stuff.
I actually have an action figure that you designed or you were part of designing. It's the Batgirl from The Batman. Oh, she's over there on my Batgirl shelf behind me. I'll pull her out and we can take a picture with her at the end. But
that's awesome.
I worked a bit on that Batgirl along with Jeff Matsuda, and we had
I was going to just say, I was like, I couldn't remember the name, Jeff Matsuda. Thank you.
Jeff was kind enough to invite me to come and play on that show, and I worked on that for the first 3 seasons, and so I got to do expression sheets for Batgirl and things like that. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that show quite a lot.
But so your favorite character design, of course, the Anti-Monitor, right? Correct?
Of course.
Green Lantern animated series.
I won't lie.
Ion Monitor.
The Ion Monitor. Exactly. Well, I worked on her too. But the Anti-Monitor was
that show is old.
was a lot of fun because A, I like Green Lantern, and B, doing the Anti-Monitor was fun because for me as a kid in the 80s, the Crisis on Infinite Earths was this big schmagegi and all the havoc that happened. So to get to work on the Anti-Monitor was a lot of fun. We Kirby'd him up a bit more than not. So it sort of made me feel more like a fourth world character or whatnot. They had some liberties with the character because he's not a strict interpretation of the original Anti-Monitor character, but we tried to keep it as close as we could while obeying the edicts of the story we were given. And it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And I want to thank you so much for using the word schmagegi. I can't even say it. All right, we're just going to move on. All right. We are here to decide the top 5 Pixar movies. I love it when we do these lists, and I'm so excited to hear your perspective from the animation side. I love that we have a character designer, a person who actually works in animation. So, Ashley, we're going to start it off with your number 5. What do you consider to be the 5th best Pixar movie? Real quick, I realized, Thomas, we did not tell you this. If one of your movies, if we say one of your movies.
Oh, I wish I could say I'd worked on a Pixar film. That would be very exciting.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, if we say one of your choices on your list.
Oh, sure.
You can decide if it's like further up on your list. Say like, let's just going to say nobody's going to say Cars 3. Okay. I mean, we know that's a fact.
Apologies to anyone who loves Cars 3.
And if you worked on Cars 3, good for you. I'm glad you got paid.
Yeah.
If I were to say Cars 3 is my number 5 and Cars 3 is your number 1, you can decide to either join in or you can wait. You can hold out for that surprise. It's just up to you, however you feel.
Delightful.
So, Ashley, we're going to start it off. Break the seal. Is it Cars 3? Number 5.
It's not. I've seen all the Cars movie a lot because I have worked in childcare for a long time, and I'm going to tell you I hate all of them. The first one's fine. And there's no.
I kind of like the first one. I'm going to admit it.
I think if you're American, you probably like the first one. But as a non-American, there's no nostalgia for Route 66 for me. My number 5, I think, is going to be divisive. I also think my number 1 is going to be divisive. This is a movie that I really loved. I cried when I saw it. I named it my best movie of the year on one of our past podcasts, and people got real mad at me. It is The Good Dinosaur, which, according to Amazon, is an epic journey into a world of dinosaurs, where an apatosaurus named Arlo makes an unlikely human friend, which I don't think does justice to how good that movie is. But that was definitely how it was marketed, as a dinosaur meets a boy, but the boy is the dog and the dinosaur is like the human. It is very much a Western trope, and it's also about dealing with the grief over losing a parent. And as somebody who also has a dead father, I found this to be very moving, very heartfelt, and I love it a lot. I don't think it is. I think there are movies that are further up my list that are more narratively perfect and have less kinks in it. I definitely think that the weird flying dinosaurs that they have to fight in the lightning storm. Guys. Yeah, I definitely think that they could have used maybe another draft or another working over, but this movie touched me in a way that not many Pixar movies have. I love it. I think Jeffrey Wright kills it, so I put it as my number 5.
Ashley.
Jason.
The Good Dinosaur is my number 5.
Hey, look at that.
For every reason that you said, I think The Good Dinosaur gets a lot of flack. Because you are right. You and I luckily got to go see a press screening of this on the Disney Live.
In the darkness before the movie started, they start playing that Western theme, and Jason leaned over and whispered, "It's a Western."
It's a Western. It's a Western. Now, I think the reason why The Good Dinosaur gets a lot of flack and is not as well appreciated as it should be is because I think people think it's too conventional. It's pretty standard. Like, the story is very standard. It has every Western trope. It's almost Shane. It's pretty close to like what the movie Shane is.
Well, I don't know what that is, so that's fine.
Yeah, one of the best Westerns ever made.
Is that the one they're watching in Logan?
Yes.
See, I do know what it is.
It's a classic one you probably know because it's been parodied by The Simpsons and so many other people. It's the scene where, like, at the end of the movie,
come back, Shane.
Yeah, the cowboy rides away and the kid goes,
"Oh,
Shane,
yeah, I know, yeah."
Yeah, The Simpsons I think has parodied it like 25 times.
Probably.
The Good Dinosaur is sort of like Pixar's version of Shane. It's very simple. It's literally about the journey. And I also think that about 10 years from now, people's perspective on this movie will change. I think also as well, because I think 10 years from now, we will see Pixar's quality level. I'm sorry to say this. I think we'll see it drop because there's only so many times that you can like reinvent.
Get it out of the park, yeah.
You can reinvent the wheel. So we're gonna start seeing more movies of a quality level that are like lower than The Good Dinosaur. And so I think in about 10 years, people will start being like, you know what movie wasn't that bad? The Good Dinosaur.
That's right.
But for me, looking through this list, The Good Dinosaur connects to just this emotional level that a lot of the other Pixar movies for me don't. And that's what I'm looking for in a Pixar movie. I'm looking for how do you connect to me on a deeply emotional level? How do you tell a simple story that I actually think really just either punches you in the heart or makes you uplifting?
Punches you in the heart.
A lot of Pixar movies punch us in the heart. That should be their new catchphrase. Pixar, we punch you in the heart. But I just think that it's really, really great. And I think a lot of people slept on this movie. And it totally is deserving of a great story. So
cool.
There you go.
Well, you've sold me. I confess this is one of the ones I missed, and now I'm like, God, I kind of want to see this. I'd like to see how you pulled out the Western tropes with dinosaurs and things, and what's more has good emotional contact, because the ad campaign was like.
It was weak.
The ad campaign was they had bad trailers. I will say that right now.
So did Frozen. Frozen had like an awful ad campaign. By the way, we own The Good Dinosaur if you would like to borrow it.
I'm going to sell you on The Good Dinosaur even more. There is a scene where the dinosaur gets lost, and because I assume you're a fan of Westerns.
Oh, sure.
He gets lost in Monument Valley.
Nice.
And it's totally Monument Valley. And he meets a Tyrannosaurus Rex, who is a sort of rancher of types, voiced by Sam Elliott.
Nice.
Yeah. He's
nice. All right. Well, see.
And he gives them a lot of sage wisdom about life and the sunsets and stuff like that. But he's basically a cowboy.
like you do.
So there you go. Thomas, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is probably, there's probably many other suggestions one might make, but I'm actually going to pick Toy Story 1 because it was, for me, it was the first major Disney film, though Pixar had done. It wasn't a musical. It was like, hey, we're going to just make a film, and you could tell a story that actually had some scary moments to it. It had some real sort of psychologically compelling things for a kids movie. Like I mean, Woody straight up ganks a guy. Like, well, I can't have you anymore.
Woody's kind of terrible in the first movie. Let's just fully admit that.
He's not a good person at all. He's so used to being the golden boy that he doesn't take being dethroned well. And so for a kid's movie, I thought, yeah, that's pretty compelling stuff. I mean, as a father of 3, and you get to see like the whole thing of like, when the daughter comes along and the older brother's like, oh, you're stealing the family affection. Oh, you can see where some of this stuff might happen. And to see that in a kid's movie, I thought was pretty great. And as I say, also because Disney, it was the first one Disney had sponsored in a while where there wasn't a big song and dance number in it. It didn't feel like it had to suddenly like horn into a certain format. And
there is a Randy Newman musical interlude, though.
There is,
there are great songs.
Strange things will happen.
But the magic of it, though, was Randy Newman wasn't a character in the show.
Yeah, but I'm a character on this podcast.
and we're glad to see you because it makes everything more melodic.
I just want to tell you all something. I love LA. That's a reference for everybody born before 1985.
And for those of us who are older, we understand and applaud your efforts.
I actually have a theory that Toy Story is a metaphor for parenting because the toys are kind of going through the same thing that the parents are. Like they suffer this trauma watching their kids grow up, and then they ultimately have to be okay with watching them leave their home, which is why I think Toy Story 4 ultimately fails, but that's another podcast. I will add on to this and say that the OG Toy Story is my number 4.
Delightful.
So, yeah, look at that.
Why, okay, why your number 4?
We actually recently just rewatched this because this year Jason and I are watching the AFI Top 100 list, and this is on there. I think
the only Pixar movie on that list.
Yes, I think you have to give Toy Story a lot of respect for being the first to do it because it does it really well. There are some things that are too shiny. Andy looks truly horrific when he shows up for that one.
Oh, for sure.
The dog looks bad too.
The dog looks pretty bad. Sid actually doesn't look that bad. Sid is maybe the best rendered human, ironically enough.
But the funny thing about that is they were horrific in retrospect, and not to say that they weren't a little off-putting at the time, because there's that uncanny valley kind of thing a little bit.
Yeah, but we've seen Incredibles and we've seen Brave. And
but to that point before that, though, the best CGI you'd seen to date was things like Reboot. And stuff like that. So,
I love Reboot.
And nothing against it, to be sure. But so
good Canadian production there.
Hey, right on. Just the idea that you could see a full-length feature CGI film that looked, I mean, on the whole, looked pretty fantastic.
Can I ask a question here? Ashley, were you old enough to see Toy Story in the theaters?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. Thomas, did you see Toy Story in theaters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I did too. And I was going to bring up that point because I remember when I saw this movie in theaters, I thought it looked stunning.
For sure.
Okay,
yeah.
I was young enough that I didn't know that there were no other movies like this. So this was like a watershed moment that completely passed me by. I was also young enough to have toys. I totally believed that this movie really happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
I thought that this was a thing. I've said this on some podcasts before, but I'll tell it again here. I wrote a note to my toys and put it under my door after I saw Toy Story, and my mom wrote it back because she's a good mom.
But if you're of that age and you write your toys, they will actually write back.
You back.
Oh, for sure. Exactly.
In Canada, there are toy rules. That's the reason why they don't write back.
Oh, my God.
But they're very polite.
Yeah, they're very polite. They'll just make you tea.
I wanted a Woody doll so bad. They just made for Toy Story 4 like the full-size Woody and Zurg and Buzz, and they're amazing. I called a Toys R Us and asked if they sold a Bo Peep. They didn't. I was mad. So that was actually one of the things I was looking forward to.
Well, see, and the worst thing for you because of that is because a lot of those toys were actual toys. So you're like going, well, dude, they've got Mr. Potato Head.
Exactly.
What the heck, man?
They
Come
have
on.
Slinky Dog. Yeah, it's very, very confusing. But I also love that this first movie, I love that this doesn't have a romance, that it's about this platonic love and respect between two male characters, because that's something, even in children's media, we don't see a lot.
Well, and to your point, that's another nice thing about it, like in the Disney canon of films, it was like the first Disney film at any period of time that was at all successful that wasn't centered around a princess.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I love Lilo and Stitch, but it was a flop when it came out.
It was pretty great, but no, it's true. There's certain things that, like, because they come to the public, they associate a certain brand with, like, oh, I'm going to get this kind of thing out of it. And then if you give them something different, like, but wait.
Well, you have to think about Toy Story 1 came out in 1995, and Lion King was the year before this.
Yeah.
So again, like when this movie came out, I remember this made news because and you might remember better than I do, Thomas, because I was quite young as well. But I can remember they're actually being, because this is when I was obsessed with Entertainment Tonight.
Sure.
I can remember
There was no internet for the lay people in 1995.
Well, no, film nerds, you had to watch Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood. It's all we had. And I remember Entertainment Tonight actually having conversations. I can remember even Leonard Maltin having a conversation of like, will Toy Story fail? Like, because it's all animated by a computer? Like, will it bomb?
Well, not only that, but people at the time were not, I mean, not that people today are super savvy in comparison, but a lot of people didn't understand that just because it's a CGI animation, it's not like you just pressed a button and the machine went off and did it.
Oh, right.
They didn't realize it, like, oh yeah, no, there's still people laboring to make that stuff work and to make the motions happen and all this other stuff. So for a lot of people, I mean, because that was when you started seeing the discussion about like, is 2D animation dead?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like,
I remember that.
And, and it's like, well, maybe in some levels to be sure, because you're seeing it play out now, but still just the idea of like people like, oh my God, the machines are going to steal our jobs. Oh my God.
Man, but also, and I don't know if people knew this, I certainly didn't know this until I was an adult person, but like they've been using computers to animate Disney movies since the 80s.
Oh, well, yeah. Well,
partial sequences and things like that.
Sure. Well, if you had like, I've heard stories about like when Tron was made, because Tron's a Disney film. Mm-hmm. And I think that might have been one of the earliest, actually. And from all things I've heard, like actually the render farm that they had to get that thing to work actually managed to black out Burbank at one point because it took so much power. Compared to today.
I kind of love the idea that Tron blacked out Burbank.
It's like when it snows in Burbank and no one leaves their home.
Since we've been talking about this so long, I will reveal that Toy Story 1 is my number 3.
Why is it at your 3? Why'd you put it so high?
Well, I also will fully admit this is the highest Toy Story on my list.
Mine as well.
They have never beat this one in terms of Toy Story. I think the reason why I love this movie so much, and the reason why I think it holds up as the best Toy Story, and the reason why it's number 3 is because it is so simple and it's so pure, even when you boil it down to the fact that it is a cowboy versus an astronaut.
I think that's interesting that you pointed that out, because you noted that as a criticism that people have of The Good Dinosaur is that it's rather simple, but you think it's a strength.
Well, I will actually say this. I think simple is the strength of Pixar. Pixar, the reason why I think all the Pixar movies have transcended, and this started with Toy Story 1, is that if you analyze their stories, they're very simple. They're very pure. They're very emotionally simple. And they put so much heart and so much wit behind it. And they work out all their story problems that you feel, again, they punch you in the heart. You feel it. I think the Pixar movies that don't work are the ones where they complicate it. Like, I think part of the reason why nobody likes the Cars franchise as a whole is because we don't understand how are the cars talking. How are they, like, that's the idea.
Talk to Matthew Peterson.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes. Matthew Peterson, the Major Spoilers podcast, has this amazing theory that as a post-apocalyptic human souls are inside the car. It's quite brilliant. And if that had been the intro to Cars, I think that we'd be in a different world. But,
I also think people in a modern age, no offense to this man, because obviously he's a very successful performer, I think people hate Larry the Cable Guy, and I think that is a big knock against that franchise.
Yeah. But it's so interesting because that movie is just about being replaced. And I think you might have hit on it too, like about the parents being replaced and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm going to assume no one who worked on the Toy Story franchise is an actual toy, but several of them were parents. That's probably where the theory comes from.
But it's such a melancholy and simple movie with amazing dialogue and amazing turns. And it's the only movie that I can ever say, because there are 4 Randy Newman songs in this movie. There are 4 Randy Newman. There's the one where Buzz leaps off the banister. There's the strange things are happening. And then he does one at the end. And then, of course, it begins with You've Got a Friend in Me. That every part of it works. It's so simple. It's so amazing. Like, this is Buzz's best movie. Like, Buzz is the best in this. Like,
also, the Sid stuff is genuinely frightening.
It's actually scary.
Thomas pointed out.
Because there's that whole subplot where they reach Sid's house.
The body mutilation.
The body horror stuff. And but at the same point, you have that whole horror thing. But then there's that weird kind of thing where the other one was like, well, but if you just get past the surface.
Yeah.
They're just like you. They're just profoundly jacked up.
Yeah, it's just Toy Story 1, again, like it set the mold. Like, they knocked it out of the park with their first movie, which is something a lot of movie companies or production companies cannot do. And they created this is the movie that created the Pixar gold standard, as I would call it. And I'm going to say this right now. Tom Hanks, one of the greatest actors of all time, this is going to be the role that everybody remembers him for. It's going to be Toy Story.
Not Bosom Buddies?
I wish. Or Joe versus the Volcano.
It's gonna be this.
Dude, Joe versus the Volcano is awesome.
It is an awesome movie, but
it's gonna be this and Forrest Gump.
Toy Story is never going to die.
No.
Like, because here's the thing.
No, Tom Hanks will die before Toy Story. And look, we all know what's gonna happen because it happened in Veep.
Well, here's the other weird thing. Unless climate change throws us into an apocalyptic world, which probably will happen.
Where the cars talk.
Toy Story 1 is pretty timeless. And I almost think even 40 years from now, you could show Toy Story to a kid and they would get it.
Probably.
You know, and that's why it's my number 3.
Cool. So I don't know whose turn it is next.
Well, since I jumped ahead.
This was my number 4.
So we should go Thomas's number 4.
All right. Well, my number 4 is a film that seems to have disappeared into antiquity, but I rather like Bug's Life because it's the Seven Samurai for kids.
I love Bug's Life, dude.
and I thought
not on my list though. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. I liked it because I'm a fan of Seven Samurai. But the thing is when you get to go see the small world, because when you're a kid, there's that whole thing where you're playing with action figures in the grass and you're using the natural environment around you, and so to see these characters at that kind of scale, running around in the weird little improvised cities and this and that and. I found it pretty charming. I liked it a lot.
It's got a great score. I'm actually Google who does the score because I think the music in it is amazing.
And the truth is another thing I found. This is just a personal side note, which is dumb. But I grew up in the Northern California Bay Area, so those hills. I grew up running around the hills like that,
which is also where Pixar was originally based. So likely the inspiration.
Exactly. So I remember like, well, where are they located? And he was like, oh, they're up in Marin. I was like, oh, the hills look just like where I grew up as a kid. So that's pretty great.
You're never gonna guess who did the score for A Bug's Life.
Howard Shore.
Randy Newman. Oh my God. How's it going? I'm back.
Stunner.
Yep. Jason has a theory that Randy Newman is a better scorer than
I'm a better composer.
Yes,
I am.
Composer. Yeah, that's the word.
I mean, I like writing songs, but you know, I've won an Oscar for my score.
If you would like to hear Randy Newman in the Christmas special this year, please tweet us at
Strange things are happening.
I remember the McDonald's toys from Bug's Life because I wanted the one with the little princess on the leaf.
Bugs, man, I'm so glad you put this in the list. I will tell you, Bug's Life is probably my 6 or 7. It came so close to making it on this list, but when I was comparing it all, it is one that everybody has forgotten. And I think
could actually sustain a sequel, I think.
I agree.
Compared to some of the other franchises that have gotten
I think Bug's Life is the perfect example of a sophomore slump. Which I always say that the sophomore slump is something that is created by the audience, not the creators.
Oh, no, for sure. Because I think you have a certain level of expectation. It's like, I mean, you have certain filmmakers that suffer from that for years. I mean, you know, you have the park the first time, they're like, when is the twist or the thing or the whatever? When in this one, it's like, well, we don't have to do it every time.
And it's easier to hit it out of the park when there's no expectations than when there's all the expectations.
Yeah, because I think Bug's Life is equal of Toy Story. I think they're both. It's funny. I kind of think like the first 5 to 6 to 7 Pixar movies are just perfect. Like they're all just great.
And then they did Cars.
Yep.
Well, I will say, you know, here's the thing about Cars. I
know we're slamming Cars a lot, and I apologize, everybody.
Cars is good. Fine.
I will be honest with you.
Love that movie.
As a guy who does not give a fig about automotives, other than to get to and from work in the LA basin.
Yes.
I was actually stunned and surprised that I thought Cars 1 was as good as it was. Because I'm like, how are you going to make me care about a car? I mean, if it's not the Batmobile or Kit from Knight Rider, I don't care. And strangely enough, they did a really good job. But they were able to humanize them in a way I didn't certainly expect. But
and then they go to Italy in the third one.
I did not know that. I've not seen the third. I saw the first 2.
I've only seen the first one.
They go to Italy for like a Grand Prix, and there's a French car and an Italian car.
You know, I will say this. I've read several articles where people that work the tourist attractions along Route 66 credit Cars for revitalizing their industry over the last 10 years. Because, you know, the first one, Radiator Springs is right on Route 66, correct? Yes.
I don't know.
And the Wigwam Hotel and all that stuff like that.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Cars.
Yes.
I think we're here to talk about Jason's number 4.
Yo soy cuatro es Coco. That doesn't work. I said my fourth name is Coco.
Well, it's good to diversify.
Yes. My fourth best Pixar movies, because you already know my third, it's Toy Story, is Coco. Coco is a movie that I did not want to see in theaters. Again, I think more recent Pixar has had a problem with their trailers. The trailers for Coco did not look interesting for me. They looked beautiful, that the animation looked great, but the story just did not interest me. And Ashley actually got to go see Coco early with a friend because she went and saw it, and she was like, oh, it's interesting. And then we got a chance to go to a free screening, and I walked to that free screening with tears in my eyes. I thought it was so brilliant. And it's funny because this is one of the few Pixar movies that is uber complicated, but it works. And I think the reason why it works is because the beginning and the end of the movie is simply about Miguel's grandmother, Coco. Because it starts and ends with her. I think that's the reason why we're willing to go on this journey with Miguel. If you don't know about it, of course, it's a 12-year-old living in St. Cecilia who wants nothing more to be a singer and a guitarist. Unfortunately for the boy, his family has forbidden music ever since his great-great-grandfather abandoned his wife and child to pursue his art years earlier. So Miguel goes through the land of the dead. There's so many spirits. It is stunning. The animation in the land of the dead is amazing. And because they base this land of the dead in this purely emotional context, it's all about emotion. Everything in this movie is about emotion. It really, really works. Like, I think it's genius when Miguel gets to the land of the dead and he meets his dead relatives, some of them who he's never met before, and they know exactly who he is and they know exactly what he's done. So it creates this hard idea that your relatives watch you after they die, because that I know is a very strong thing in Hispanic and Latinx cultures, the idea that your ancestor spirits are always there watching you. And I dare anyone to watch the scene where Miguel sings the song to Coco at the very end and not cry. There's some, because when she responds to it, to me, I think the creators and the writers at Pixar knew exactly what they were doing, and they were definitely going for, you thought Toy Story was a metaphor for parenting. I think Coco is almost a metaphor for Alzheimer's.
Well, because that's what we all kind of fear, right?
Yes, and when she responds to that song, to me that's more powerful than the opening it up. Up's not on my list. Cry out in the echo chamber, if you will. Up is not on my list.
Can I lob two criticisms at this movie?
Please.
The first time you go to the land of the dead, it deals with a bunch of Mexican people who can't cross a border. And that's kind of harsh in the current climate. And also, when this movie was made, Disney tried to copyright and trademark the phrase Dia de los Muertos because they're an evil corporation.
Well,
I was pretty stunned by that. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Disney, look, Disney is evil.
Now, was that a response to them trying to circumvent the Book of Life from being made?
I'm not sure. But I know that, yes, I don't know if they sued Guillermo in that company or I'm not sure. But I know because Book of Life predates Coco by a few years.
By quite a bit. Because I remember talking to Jorge Gutierrez about that years ago when I was working on Ben 10. And he's like, I got this thing. I want to make this movie. I was like, well, what's it about? And he told me what it's about. I was like, well, that sounds fantastic. I hope you can get that done. So when that thing came out, I was like,
I will say, I think another reason why Coco is my number 4 is because Pixar of late has become a sequel machine. Now, all of Hollywood has become a sequel machine, but Coco gave me hope that Pixar could go back to its roots and take these original ideas and these original characters and give us a new story. Coco gave me hope that I'm like, there's Pixar. That's the Pixar I love, not just making sequels that we don't really want.
Yeah.
So that's why Coco is my number 4.
I think that's an excellent choice, especially given what you're saying about the whole sequel thing. Because it seems to be, I didn't think they were ever going to do sequels, and then suddenly,
I didn't either.
Bunches and bunches, but wait. I thought that wasn't their thing.
It's interesting because I would have told you based on the first Toy Story movie that you don't need sequels, and I think 2 and 3 are really quite good. I think it's a good trilogy, but I don't think there are a lot of Pixar movies that are crying out for sequels.
No, it's interesting.
Incredibles being maybe the only one.
They're very self-contained, and the other interesting thing about it is that almost every Toy Story could be considered the ending. Like every Toy Story like ends, even 2, you're like, yeah, that could be it, and I'd be fine. And they keep making more, and you're like, stop.
We're gonna get at least 5.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mark my words.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're going to see the end of Toy Story anytime soon, because I think 4 is going to blow up and be huge. Anyways, Coco is my number 4. And before we move on into everybody's number 3s, everybody out there, I just want to remind you, we have a Patreon out there, patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. That is what makes this podcast free to you all out there on the Spotify's and the iTunes, all that stuff like that. And you can join it for $1 a month.
Yeah, less than the price of a cup of coffee.
Less than a price of a cup of coffee.
Especially if you go to Starbucks.
But if you want to spend the price of a cup of coffee every month, our $5 level is an extra podcast that you can only hear on a Patreon. It's called Geek History Lesson Extra. This week, we're going to be talking more with Thomas, and we're going to be talking about some of those shows we mentioned earlier. We're gonna get some secrets from those shows. Yeah. You can only hear that on Patreon.
Because we're huge fans. So we're just going to use this as an excuse to geek out.
If you are ready for a 20-minute discussion on extreme Ghostbusters, then buckle up, my friends. And Green Lantern, the animated series.
Yeah.
But he's also worked on Ben 10, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So we're going to pick his animator brain. You can only hear that on the Patreon, patreon.com/Jawiin. Please go over there and support us today. And thank you so much to all the lovely patrons.
Yes.
The super friends, as we call them.
Yes, our super friends.
Okay, so we already know my number 3. It's Toy Story number 1. Ashley, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a little thing that deals with one of my least favorite musicals of all time, but one of my favorite robots of all time, and that is WALL-E. I love WALL-E so much.
We also have a WALL-E toy in this room as well.
And an Eva toy. It's also deeply prescient about our current environmental state. Oh, so sad. WALL-E is so interesting because it didn't win the Oscar for Best Sound Editing because The Dark Knight did, and it's only sound editing and visuals, and it tells you an entire story. And for me, this is one of the most effective love stories that Pixar has ever told. I think The Incredibles is a pretty incredible love story, but it's not that, see what I did there? It's not that classic meet cute, boy meets a girl, and then there's the sexy complication, and it's about a married couple, and that's an interesting exploration in and of itself. But WALL-E is a love story between a trash can and a fancier trash can with the automatic top, and how they save the planet together. And I just love it so much. And a lot of the reason that I think people like WALL-E, and it was and remains very popular, very well loved, is because of the design. The designs of WALL-E and Eva are so incredible and so gorgeous. And even though I hate My Fair Lady, it's a very clever use of the Pygmalion story to inform that storytelling. I also like that it just casts the humans as complete idiots the whole time. Like, it's just like, look, we done messed stuff up.
Don't forget National Treasure Fred Willard.
Who's that?
He's the guy that he's like one of the
Is he
only
the captain, or is he the guy who adopts all the kids with the lady?
And he's the safety videos. I think he's the captain.
The ship's AI?
But he's like the ship that keeps talking. It's like the only real human that's ever been shown in any Pixar movie.
Oh! I still don't know who he is. I don't know what I'm supposed to have known him from.
What's that?
Used to be a weatherman, right?
Yeah, he's been like basically every comedic movie of all time. He's in it. He has like a cameo in all the American Pie movies.
I've seen none of those.
If you saw his face, you'd recognize him.
If you say so. I love WALL-E. It's so cute. Everyone, like, you can't really say, I could say that I don't like My Fair Lady all I want, but like there's not a bad thing to say about it. And humanizing the roach to be WALL-E's little pet is so cute. And it's something that we think of bugs and scavengers and things like that very negatively. So I like that they embraced it. I also love that there's a lot of weird Pixar Easter eggs in WALL-E. Like, he's a Mac. And when he's charging up, he makes like the Mac starting up sound. And I think that's so funny. I still see WALL-E on Valentine's Day cards. I always see a couple cosplaying as WALL-E and Eva. And I think the impact of it is maybe as integral as the story it's trying to tell. And it's one of the most on the nose, like, we are teaching you a lesson of all of the Pixar movies, and maybe the one that we've least taken to heart. But I think it's deeply charming, and I think it's a very intelligent way to tell a story. So my number 3 is WALL-E.
Great choice.
I will say that actually that was my number 3 as well.
Hey!
Because I liked it for all the reasons you discussed. I will say that I as someone who is a child of the 70s and was forewarned of ecological disaster and things like that. You keep looking at like, but look at we even have in the pop culture. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. But aside from the doom and gloom part of it, I will say that the hopeful part is nice. Mm-hmm. I will say that the design of it overall was pretty great. I thought when you're seeing the world that Wally's inhabiting by himself, and the palettes and the world he creates for himself in that world with the cockroach and all that stuff, I think is pretty great.
And the Twinkie.
Exactly. I thought that was all really engaging because, once again, much like the thing with Cars, the first one anyway, it seems like something would be really hard to become invested in a way, and yet they managed to do that really. That's the one thing that, regardless, most of the Pixar films I've ever run across, they have the ability to you may not think you're emotionally invested, but allow me to show you how incorrect you are. Yes, I am completely invested in these weird inanimate objects that remind me of things around my house.
You're like, I want them to kiss and they don't even have lips. What is happening?
Right?
Like they touch their foreheads.
When you're thinking that Wally's going to tack out for the last time and this and that, and you're just like, oh my God, getting the vapors. But get my fainting couch out. But no, it's pretty great and weirdly prescient because when you look at the world we live in today, where it must be, if it weren't for the fact that people have YouTube to put videos on, it'd be a golden age for muggers. Because people got like the screen in front of their face the whole time and whatever. You're like, yeah, when did they make WALL-E again? Because it seems like it almost like they're walking down the street going, this would be funny.
Yeah, it's 2008.
Which is wild because you're like, wow, that's over a decade ago.
Right, before smartphones were quite the thing they are now.
Right before, like a couple years before smartphones. Yeah. Because I think the iPhone hits like 2010.
I have no idea.
I think, yeah.
It's hard to say, but they like guess what? It's going to be like this.
Well, we do know that Pixar and Apple have been in bed together since the beginning, so perhaps they had some insider insight.
Guys, be careful.
Steve Jobs did that demonstration where he was like, do you want to find a Starbucks? Click.
We need to prepare humans for the iShip that we're going to ship them off. And the iLounger. So make WALL-E.
Precisely.
Yeah, they're like, look, guys, get to exercising because there's no gravity in space.
Awesome. All right, it's a great choice. All right, so my number 3 was Toy Story 1. So Ashley, coming back to you, what is your number 2?
My number 2, in my opinion, has the greatest Pixar soundtrack of all time. That should have been a James Bond movie soundtrack. The Incredibles! Because it's so incredible.
Is that your number 2 as well?
It is.
We're going for the trifecta. It is my number 2 as well.
What?
We all picked Incredibles as the number 2.
I thought it would have been your number 1.
Nope. I have a different number 1. I thought objectively about my number 1, but let's talk about Incredibles. We'll get to my number 1 later.
I mean, as I'm going to steal this from Jason, it's the best Fantastic Four movie that's ever been made.
Totally true.
Even though, again, we watched this right before Incredibles 2 came out, and even though you look at it and you're like, Violet's hair is a little bit shiny, and there are things that were much improved in the animation style between the original and the 14 years that intervened between the sequel. This is a very simple story. It tells it very well. The design is what carries the day. I think Pixar decided that because if people don't know, with every movie, Pixar picks a specific aspect to try and perfect. This, I believe, was their shot at doing humans for the first time.
This is their first human movie.
They were so horrific in Toy Story. And it really, really works. And they kind of come from the Simpsons school of design where everyone has to be unique in silhouette. And I think that's one of the reasons why it resonates. I was a teenager when this came out, so Violet was my jam. I just wanted to be her. I still want to be her. She's voiced by someone old enough to be my mom. Why can't I be her? And I think it's the only Pixar movie that everyone has universally said, give me a sequel to this.
Oh, sure.
And I think that speaks to its resonance in popular culture. And it came out like 5 seconds before the huge superhero boom. So again, very prescient.
It was, I mean, not to speak ill of the superhero films that came before, but it was the first really great comic book movie where it felt like a comic book as opposed to a film where you're like going, well, I don't like comics.
Yeah.
But they're paying me to make a movie about this guy in tights, so I got to spend the rest of the movie trying to explain how he's going to get in the tights.
Let's put him in black leather, and then how do we name the villain? Yeah.
Exactly.
Incredibles like leans into it.
No, they're like, all right. I'm just gonna put these tights on.
I'm gonna squeeze into them and we're gonna do this. It also has one of Jason's all-time favorite jokes. What's the French guy's name?
Oh, Bon Voyage.
Jason thinks that's so funny.
I think Bon Voyage is one of the greatest comic book villains of all time, and I still call shenanigans on Brad Bird for not putting Bon Voyage in the sequel.
Well, I will tell you, it's funny you mentioned that because I had mentioned to a coworker of mine that I was going to be doing this evening. He that was his thing too. He's like, dude, Bon Voyage is my jam.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep.
So it's very funny that you mentioned that because my coworker on my show was like, he said the exact same thing as we're walking back from lunch. So,
It was because like he's so like the name Bon Voyage is so great, making him a mime is so great, and then taking the joke one step further and having him speak French is genius. I still laugh.
By the way, the French dialogue is well written and there are jokes in it and they don't translate it for anyone.
I laugh every time I watch this movie when Bon Voyage goes, Sacre bleu, incroyable. I don't know why, but I think it's so, or Miss Incroyable, or however he says it. I love it every time. It's interesting for me. Incredibles, again, is an interesting movie because it tonally shifts about every 20 minutes. Like the beginning of the movie is Watchmen.
Sure.
It is the superheroes at a golden age. They were all told to go away. The second act is this weird retired James Bond secret agent, and so he goes in the secret agent, so it becomes very James Bondian. And then the climax is straight out of Jack Kirby. We have 4 heroes and they're fighting a giant robot, and how are they going to do it? How are they going to unite the city? It's a strange plan. We don't know, but they have to team up to do it. And it's weird because it's not a simple Pixar movie, but it's simple in parts. And it's an interesting idea that Bob Parr, the main character, and each act learns a different lesson.
Oh, for sure.
Like he doesn't learn an overall lesson. He learns a different lesson in every act. And for me, I think it has one of the the greatest performances in all of Pixar movies is, oh God, I forget his name. The gentleman who voices Mr. Incredible, Coach himself. This is
Craig Nelson.
Craig Nelson, thank you so much. When they shoot down the plane.
Oh, that part was wrenching. I will tell you.
Yes, and
that moment for me is the flip side of that is when you have Elastigirl like trying to get it together and she knows that it's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And she goes and saves her kids. As a parent, that gets me every time because you just see her like leap out there. And it's like, but his response also likewise. Yep. The emotional weight that they give these characters is pretty fantastic.
And the other thing about this movie, too, is that we've, at this point, had seen live-action movies, and Marvel does live-action superhero movies. But even to this day, even 15 years later, The Incredibles 1, I think, has one of the most realistic portrayal of how superheroes would act and be handled by society in the real world. Like, I think every beat they get, like how the world would react to superheroes and stuff like that, I think is spot on, and they get it better than most Marvel movies, I think, which is shocking that an animated movie was the one that did it.
Well, I think part of that, though, is, and this is, I think, a problem not for the Marvel. I think Marvel movies are great, pretty much.
Oh, I do too.
I will say that I think the problem with live action superhero movies as a whole is the filmmakers need to somehow make it real. And if you're going from, and I say this as a lifelong comic book nerd, they're not real. And at no point do I need to know why kryptonite doesn't affect everybody else or why this or why that. I just know it doesn't. And that's the rule.
Yeah.
And we're working with it and it's okay. Whereas, if you sat down, and I love me some Batman and all, but if you leapt off a building, your arms are going to wrench right out your sockets.
Oh, you have no knees to speak of.
No, it's going to be bad. But if you're going to lean into it and go, hey, I'm going to have a movie with a guy with laser eyes or a lady who can catch on fire or grow as big as a house or whatever. If at that point you've made that supposition and then you're going, but we got to make it realistic.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, well, dude, you've kind of missed the boat. It's a fairy tale. And so how do you work with those constraints? And I think they do a really good job with it by just going, it's a superhero.
Yep.
Let's make this thing happen. Now you can't have realistic consequences or whatever, but you much like with the fact that they made them human, right? The first human movie Pixar did, design wise, the shapey thing works really well.
Oh my God, it's my ultimate favorite female design is Mrs. Incredible with her
great.
hips. I love it so
Ellen?
much. Yeah.
But the thing about it that works really well, and it's something I pointed out to somebody else because of Monsters Inc. back in the day. At the time when Monsters Inc. came out, there was another film that came out from, I don't know who made it, but it was the Final Fantasy movie.
Oh, yes.
I remember that.
And
I remember the hair.
Spirits
Within or something like that.
Yeah.
And the problem that, like, I was trying to point out to a friend of mine, because people were just get freaked out by that movie and they couldn't figure it out. And no one was really talking Uncanny Valley at that point because they didn't have the terminology to work with. But it was just that whole idea of like going, okay, well, you don't feel emotionally invested in these human people who are getting murdered horribly. But you watch this furry dude in an apple with a little girl and you're weeping at the end when the door gets shredded. And you're like, oh my God, oh no.
Furry dude and
it's
an
because
apple.
at no point does your brain go, hey, that's not right. So when they did Incredibles, the thing that was nice about it, because they're doing these great shape theories to it, you just go, oh, symbol for a man, symbol for a kid, symbol for whatever, and your brain just buys it. It doesn't need to go, those eyes are weird.
Right, and Jack literally looks like a Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh,
like
for sure.
babies don't look like
And similar to our Toy Story argument, I remember when this came out, again, all the entertainment sites were like, will Pixar fail because they're doing a movie about humans? Like, those were actually articles that were out
I'm
there.
sure.
I have a special connection to this movie because I saw this movie 3 times in theaters. And part of the reason I saw this movie 3 times in theaters is because this movie came out, this was like a Thanksgiving movie, and it came out when I was stationed in Fort Sill. I was within 1 moment of deploying, I was within 1 month of deploying to Iraq.
Oof.
And this movie came out and I was like, oh my God, this is like the greatest superhero movie I ever saw. So whenever I got like a spare moment, I went and saw Incredibles again. So it's interesting. This movie is one of the best superhero movies ever made, and it's about superheroes that never existed before this movie.
Yeah, and they finally merchandised it, and you better believe I bought all the Barbies and all the clothes.
I bought all the action figures.
The way they set that whole thing up, though, you felt like, because the way they were able to really have a smart method to deliver the story in bits, like whether you're looking at the clippings or whatever, to get that bigger feel of the world. So you know about the gazer beam guy when you find his corpse in the thing because you saw stuff with him or this or that, so that you had a feeling that there was this world. I'm still waiting for my Frozone movie. I'm just going to say that.
I think
right
they should
now.
make
It's my favorite Samuel L. Jackson thing ever.
Well,
I'd rather see Frozone than Incredibles 3, to be honest with you.
Oh no, I would totally be down to see that, because the thing is first of all, he's a great character. He's cool as all heck, no pun intended. And the thing is that he does, like, if they ever make another X film, and who knows if they will.
Oh,
really, when you do
will.
Iceman, you got to look at Frozone, because they take that whole speed skate thing and the way he moves and his powers work is like how you should deal with an Iceman. I mean, he's great. And Samuel L. Jackson's great. So it's like, what are you going to do with that? But yeah, no, the whole world they created gave you this feeling of like, oh, of course I should have comics for this. Why don't I have comics for this?
Well, and Edna Mode feels like the most memeable character when you are a comic book fan, like the no capes thing. I'm like, whoa, as a Robin fan.
Oh, for sure.
That is absolutely not. And then Spider-Verse steals that same beat. No capes. And I'm like, what's wrong with capes?
Capes are cool. Everything's cool with a cape. I'm sorry. But that's Darwinism. The dumb guys with the capes ain't gonna make.
Yeah. What about a little capelet, little Batgirl short cape?
Yeah, Robin's short cape's pretty great. And as a fellow Robin fan, I'm just gonna say, dude,
Yeah.
short cape's working.
Yeah. But we're going to go all the way back to Ashley's original point. The best score
Oh no!
of all of Pixar. Michael
amazing.
Giacchino's, and also it is one of Giacchino's best scores. It's in his top 5, and I'm a big. That's my favorite composer.
This was the first time I was aware of who he was.
Yes.
Was this movie?
All right, so we all picked Incredibles as our number 2. So that means we are moving.
We all have the same number 1.
right on to our number 1. Ashley, you are number 1.
Yes.
So start it off. What's the greatest Pixar movie? Let's go. Let's start them fights.
This is not the greatest Pixar movie. I said at the beginning this is going to be divisive. This is my favorite Pixar movie.
Best.
I knew from the trailer this was going to be my favorite Pixar movie. Nothing has replaced it as my favorite Pixar movie.
Can I have a guess?
You can literally see it.
I mean, I can.
Sure. You also know the answer.
That's true. I know this one. I was gonna
try to come in again, actually. Randy Newman here, you know?
Randy Newman did not work on this movie.
No.
No. It's Brave. Brave is my all-time favorite Pixar movie. I saw it in the cinema with my mother. Nice. And when you don't, well, you know because it's a kid's movie, but when you don't know she's not going to turn back from being a bear and the sun is rising and Meredith's crying, she's like, I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I was like crying. And my mom looks over at me and goes, it's just a movie.
You know, I want to say when you
don't judge, you don't know.
It's funny.
I'm emotional about you. Don't you get it?
When I saw this movie in theaters too, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, they're not going to turn her back. I was like, is this the Pixar movie about dealing with your mother's death?
I love.
In fact, could have played that way very easily.
Yeah,
truly. I love Scotland. It's my favorite country in the whole world. I love Scottish mythology and witchcraft. I love princesses who use weapons and don't need no man. Like, for me, Brave is the confluence of so many tropes that I love. I think it's gorgeous. They were working on hair. Her hair is incredible. And people used to say it defies the laws of physics, but if you go, you can find the Merida hair models, and it doesn't defy the laws. That's the way their hair looks. It's incredible. And then when I was in theater school, I took an accents and dialects class.
I was going to make you do this if you didn't do it.
We worked on Scottish. And so I did this scene where she fights with her mom. And for me, for accents and dialects, there's always a sentence that gets you into it. And so mine for Scottish is, if you had the chance to change your fate, would ya? Which was the intro for sort of the tagline.
Well, that's pretty good. I'm Randy Newman. Hey.
Thank you. That means so much to me that you think my Scottish is good.
I wrote a song for Brave. You want to hear it?
No, I don't. Mine is...
Brave things are happening.
Brave actually...
They didn't go for it.
Brave actually has 2 pop songs in it that are like really stunning. And I
pitched 5.
Did you?
I didn't go for any of them.
I bet you did. I actually have the Brave art book as well. I think the environments in Brave are very undersung because it embraces that Snow White scary forest thing that Disney did so well in its early like OG princess movies, and I just don't know if people like that anymore. But I really like it.
What's the little thing of light?
The will-o'-the-wisp.
The will-o'-the those are great. I think that looks in
that whole
the animation
pretty great.
Yeah, the animation in that sequence is great. Yeah,
she's following them through the woods, and in the witch's shop. And I've shared this fact on Geek History Lesson a lot. Now I'll share it again in our socials. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs in her wood carvings. All of the previous Pixar movies are depicted there. There's like a big carving of Sully. It's really, really cool. And that's what started the theory that all Pixar universes are connected, was Brave.
Now, I want to ask, we sort of had this conversation with Good Dinosaur. I'm going to open it up to both of you. Brave is another one of these Pixar movies, like A Bug's Life. And I think Brave is great. Brave is not on my list. I do think Brave is great. It's not as well appreciated. Now, I have a crazy theory for this. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have another theory. I wonder if the reason why people don't give a lot of credit to Brave is because, is it the idea that this is the first Pixar princess movie? That it's like they're stepping on Disney's toes.
But it's an untraditional princess movie. Everyone likes to say that Frozen is the first one to not have a romantic subplot.
Sure.
Lies. I
have to agree with Ashley on this. I think the fact that she may be the first Pixar princess, but she's the first Disney princess who pretty much was tougher than all.
Who's actually awesome? Yeah,
it was awesome. I mean, she was great. The fact that she was able to outshoot people in this, and I mean, she was awesome. But I think
Brave
hang out with.
I think Brave is awesome. It's one of Pixar's better movies.
I think the reason it doesn't resonate, and perhaps because they did not embrace this in the marketing, I think it's because it's about a woman and her relationship with her mother.
Oh, really?
I do. There's no... I mean, Billy
right.
Connolly plays the dad, and he's really fabulous, and she has those 3 little triplet brothers, but most marketing tends to be very masculine focused, and that's not what this movie is, and they did not market it as sort of... They could have... If it was made now, it would have been like this feminist journey, and we would have embraced that, but this was like 2009?
Sure. Well, the thing is with a lot of that kind of stuff.
2012 was Brave.
There you go. Yep, I'm good at time.
The truth is there's a lot of films that they don't know how to market because they don't really know how to.
Yeah.
They just don't. And quite frankly, had they been able to let people know what that was about, then people might have actually signed up to watch it.
So Brave is the only Pixar movie that deals with a mother and a daughter relationship, but there is another Pixar movie with a female and female relationship. It's Inside Out,
yeah.
which is, it's not, they don't really have a relationship because...
Also, Joy is a bully.
Well, yeah,
She's awful to sad. I watched that movie also a lot from working with children. That movie is messed up, and it teaches you not to embrace your emotions and to tramp your sadness down until it turns into a tumor. And that is dangerous rhetoric, my friend. I have a bone to pick with Inside Out. People like it because the designs are cute.
And you're a meat robot.
That's right. Go see Brave.
No, I will say that Brave had a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, as you know, anybody who's had any kind of parental strife, and who hasn't? You know, you realize, as you get older and you realize, God, I was an asshole. Oh no.
Oh yeah. And hopefully you have good sense to apologize to your parents. You're so lucky they didn't kill you before you turned 18.
Oh dear Lord. The number of times I've called my mother and go, I'm so sorry. Because I have children now. And I'm like, oh no. I can see it now. Oh, I'm so wrong. But yeah, no. Brave was a great movie. I wish it was on my list. It was almost on my list.
That's okay.
But yes, it was very good.
It's in my top 10.
It just means there's more Brave merchandise for me to buy.
That's all good.
Jason bullied me into buying a Brave t-shirt.
I did because I'd never seen it before. I was like, you have to buy this or else they won't make more. Vote with your dollar, everybody. All right. Good sir. We're at the number one. What do you consider to be the best?
It was a tough
Pixar
one
movie
because there's so many choices to be had. But the truth is that I was sort of stuck with my number one and my number two because I liked both the Incredibles films. So for my number one, I'm going to go for Incredibles 2 because
divisive choice.
Sequel.
I liked getting to see Helen Parr be badass. Like the whole. Honestly, I still in my head see the whole night scene where she's tracking to the lair and whatever, and the lighting is amazing, and she looks cool and whatever. But at the same time, as a parent who's done YouTube videos to learn math in the middle of the night so I can help my kid not fail.
Oh my God, the new math whole thing was so funny.
I'll be honest with you. I've had that experience. So I watched that whole thing kind of going, yeah, I can understand that. But at the same point, I didn't feel it was pedantic. I don't think it made either parental unit like castigated because they're not there. I like that they supported each other. It's like, hey, you go do your thing. I got this. It's fine. You go do your superhero thing.
So when can we look forward to your Mr. Incredible cosplay?
I don't look that dissimilar. No, I wish I did. That would be my number one. Then there's more Frozone in it. Frozone.
I mean, how could they have changed math? Math is one of the best Pixar jokes of all time.
And every parent I know has had that discussion, especially as your kids get hit junior high. And you're like, I know I was bad at math to begin with, but this is bullshit.
I also,
sorry.
That's okay. I also love the sequence it's my favorite Jack versus the raccoon.
Oh yeah. No,
and then
it's
being
awesome.
like, you have superpowers.
Well, no, and I forgot. I thought they all knew at the end of the first movie. But I guess he was so high up in the air that they just didn't see him nuking out. But for humor, I love that scene. I almost lost it when they took poor Violet to the restaurant and she volcanoed out of her nose. I was like, oh my God, that was astoundingly well done. I thought it was a great film. My kids dug it. My daughter was very excited to see Elastigirl go being cool.
Yeah.
Also interesting that Incredibles, we were just talking about this. The main plot is about Helen, and then Screenslaver is also a woman. So it's a woman. It's a woman protagonist and a woman antagonist, which is something, again, Pixar doesn't do that often, which I actually really appreciate.
Well, and not just Pixar, to be fair, most media.
There you go. Sorry.
For sure. No, she was a good lead, and the villain was cool. I thought the twist was nice. The thing that I liked about that whole story is they do give you a little misdirect.
Yeah.
As opposed to being super on the nose. It's almost a little noir. You get that whole like, you think you know, but you really don't.
Well, that universe, the Incredibles universe, has that sort of Batman the Animated Series quality where you're like, is this the 60s? Do they live in a shag pad in the hills?
Well, they certainly do. And then they get that remote control house having all kind of havoc.
That was so funny. But I think that's to its credit, and I think that's why
It
people
feels
like
timeless,
it. Yeah, because it will never feel too. I mean, it feels intentionally retro.
Yeah.
Well, and it hits, like, as you say, with the soundtrack for the first movie. It's totally the embodiment of like superheroes meets James Bond. And the music supports it, and the ambiance of the world they've created supports it, which is, it's almost like that classic Marvel launching point.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like, all right, well, here's
Vaguely
Marvel
Kennedy
Comics,
era.
boom, here you go. The atomic age and heroes and things and stuff and spies and international intrigue and whatever.
It's like the idea that the 1939 World's Fair never ended.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like it happens every year. And all of society like bases their design aspects off of that.
Hot take, it should happen every year.
I think so. Yeah.
We could use a little more collective world showing off, I guess. That's
Sure.
not the Olympics, so
Yeah.
not totally corrupt.
Exactly.
Cool.
Something that isn't like, hey,
It's interesting for all our talk about Pixar sequels. You put a Pixar sequel as your number one. It's very interesting.
it's true.
But it's one of
no
the
judgment.
only
I'm
good
just, like, very
ones.
curious.
But the truth, but here's the thing.
It is one of the good
I
ones.
kind of cut The Incredibles a little bit of slack insofar, and as nerds, you understand the sequelized nature of comics as a whole. I mean, the thing is like, the other ones may work as sequels and whatever, but the very nature of superheroes is a soap operatic sequelization. So so long as it holds up and it's a good job, I'm like, I don't mind.
No, that's what I said when I walked out too. Like, I didn't think it was as good as the first one, but for me, I remember when I first was talking to people about it, I said it felt like Fantastic Four #2.
Sure,
It felt like just like, oh, it's Jack Kirby gave us another great adventure, awesome. And to be honest with you, I do want to see Incredibles 3. I actually really want to see that
Well,
movie.
quite frankly, you could watch them back to back and have one large movie.
Absolutely.
I mean,
because
without
it
fail.
picks up literally 5 seconds.
Literally, like, boom, there you go.
And the other interesting thing, the reason why I want to see 3 is 1 is about Bob, 2 is about Helen, 3 needs to be about the 3 kids.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to see it. That's awesome. That's a great choice. Incredibles 2
Brave.
and Brave.
So what's your number one?
My number one is a movie that we have already talked about, but I saved it because it was my number one. It is WALL-E. I think WALL-E is the greatest Pixar movie ever made, simply because of the first lesson that they teach you in film school, which, whether you need to go to film school, it's up to you, kids. I don't know. Sometimes it's not necessary. But the best lesson I learned in film school is that the most powerful films to me are the ones that don't have a lot of dialogue. And the first 25 minutes of WALL-E, the only dialogue is My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
And it works. I remember seeing this in theater. And there was a moment in my head, kind of like where I was like, oh, are they going to kill the mom in Brave?
Yeah.
About 15 minutes in this movie, I was like, I don't think anybody's going to talk. I think they're literally going to give us a 90-minute movie where there's no dialogue.
And it didn't win Best Sound Editing.
I agree with
I mean,
you.
I know the Oscars are wildly unjust, but I will never live that down.
Ben Burtt should have won. And to be honest with you, I would have loved to have seen the version of WALL-E where there were no humans. But I still thought it worked so well. I thought it was so great. It has such a Stanley Kubrick kind of feel to it. Just the way it's designed and the way it's geometrical and the shapes and the sounds. It's like every element of WALL-E is 100%. There's no scene in WALL-E where I'm like, I don't know about that. Everything of it is beautiful, and WALL-E is the only Pixar movie I think where it just looks like a living painting. Every single frame looks like a painting, and it again emphasizes the thing that I think Pixar does so well. It's so simple. And yes, you are correct. You said this earlier, Ashley. I'm going to steal your line.
Okay.
It is Pixar's greatest love story. It's, you know what, to be honest with you, I almost think it's Disney's best love story.
Well,
because
people are going to fight you on that, my friend.
I don't care. Prince Eric is a terrible person, so go away.
Prince Eric is the hottest of all Disney princes.
Well,
Thank you very much.
he's also a dummy.
But here's the thing about most Disney romances. They're pretty shallow.
Yes.
They're pretty shallow. It's not. It's kind of like they don't know each other. You know,
I mean,
that 6 months later, they're going to be at each other's throats.
Pongo and Perdita's a pretty solid one.
Yeah. But yeah, they're just, WALL-E is so simple and pure. And again, it was another one where I thought they might let WALL-E die. I really, there was a quick second where I was like, they're going to end this movie where Eva stays with dead Wall-E forever just because. And I was like, and I thought we were
That's
going to.
so sad. Why would you say that?
Well, because again, Pixar they always go for these great lessons, right? We talked about like Coco is sort of this lesson for Alzheimer's. Toy Story is sort of this lesson for letting your kids go. I was like, is Wall-E going to be, because it's about the death of Earth. And is Wall-E going to be the movie that's like Bambi, where, you know, Bambi's mother dies and we teach kids a lesson about death? The movie came out a long time ago. You know, is Wall-E going to be the Pixar movie that teaches you this is death?
Yeah.
And it's taught to us by two emotionless robots.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, especially in Western
There's
culture.
people out in the world you can be less emotional than those robots.
Sure. I get it.
We could really use an awesome kids movie about death and dealing with that.
Yeah.
That's really something we as a culture need.
Well, Coco's sort of a little bit that, but yeah.
1,000% serious.
But no, I think when you look at Pixar, Wall-E hits everything that Pixar does strong. It hits the story, hits the music. The music is also great, and it hits animation at every point. And again, Pixar, we talked about the first movie. It, what's that? What's the word? Anthropomorphized. It anthropomorphized a trash compactor, for God's sakes, and we love it. And
it's also the only Pixar character that you see poop. Because Wall-E poops out the little cube.
Look, everybody poops. Everybody. And
that was for all of our listeners under the age of 12.
I still see kids at conventions. I go crazy when the guys who make the R2-D2s have the remote control Wall-E. And it talks. The kids go crazy.
It's also big. It's very tall. And Wall-E's teeny tiny.
Wall-E, I think, I don't know. It's for me... I don't know if Pixar will ever beat Wall-E for me. Ever.
You wait for Wall-E 2, Eva.
No, I don't want... I do not want Wall-E 2.
I don't either.
I do not want Wall-E 2 ever. I definitely do not want to see. It's like E.T. I do never need to know what happens to Wall-E. I know in my heart of hearts what happens to Wall-E.
Yeah, he breaks down and Eva drags him around for the rest of her life.
I mean, he rusts apart and he falls and he in the
Does the cockroach outlive Wall-E?
Yes, the cockroach lives in his corpse.
Well, on that note,
sets up a home in his eyeballs. Okay, and so there you go. All right, so there is our list, everybody. If you want to check some of these movies out, if you haven't seen some of these movies, where you been living, a rock? Our recommended reading, which you can find where, Ashley?
At geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading.
Will be some of our top choices. So you can go pick them up, get them on Blu-ray, or just watch them directly on Amazon Video. We're going to go to the next section of this podcast, the Honor Roll. Ashley, what's that?
The Honor Roll is the part of the podcast where if you go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars, we'll read whatever you write. So we have 2 people joining the Honor Roll today. One is Wolfboy5802, and they say, this podcast is amazing. Hi, I just started listening and have learned so much. #GHL. I love it. Brevity is the soul of wit, Wolfboy, and you have nailed it. Also joining is Justin Adkins, who says, Geek History Lesson Review, 5 stars. My name is Justin Adkins, and a few years ago, my brother Jonathan Adkins, Jonathan is a great patron, and we like him a lot, got me into this podcast. At first, I couldn't see the appeal. That's harsh, my friend. But after watching the podcast grow, it has immediately become my favorite podcast to listen to while I'm at work. This podcast has some funny impressions, such as Bob Diamond. I don't remember who that is. And
I don't remember who Bob Diamond is either.
We've been on 159 episodes. I'm sorry. Acting like Hank Pym. Jason's Doctor Strange and Ashley's Clea impressions always bring a smile to my face. If you want to learn comics in a fun and unique way, this is the podcast you're looking for. Can't wait to listen to you guys more in the future. P.S. I love you, Jonathan, and thank you. Anyways, gotta go. West Coast Avengers. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, Justin Adkins and Wolfboy5802, welcome to the Honor Roll. You're going to get a key to the Teacher's Lounge where you can come inside and you can get a free kazoo next to the refrigerator.
Wow.
Yeah, the free kazoo is provided by Mr. Newman.
What does Mr. Newman teach?
Of this music and LA history, because I love LA.
Great.
Davey the Fat Boy comes by my class too.
What?
That's a deep cut Randy Newman reference.
If you say so.
People born before 1990 are loving it. All right, thank you so much. If you want to join them and get your name shouted out by Randy Newman in the future, go to Apple Podcasts, because it's not called iTunes anymore, and leave us a 5-star review. It helps us in the search algorithms and makes a big difference. And by the way, I just want to put a shout out to everybody. Mr. Thomas here is a big fan of Geek History Lesson, and if you are a fan of Geek History Lesson, do me a favor. Do me a favor for this month. Tell a friend about Geek History Lesson. If you like Geek History Lesson, tell a friend. Let's let's grow the Mind University.
Yeah.
Do it.
Let's
do
do
it
it
today.
All right, so Thomas, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Geek History Lesson. I loved your choices. I love your perspective. We're going to have more with you in the Patreon Geek History Lesson Extra at patreon.com/Jawiin. But real quick, please tell everybody online where they can find you on social media. And also, do you have a website where you sell some of your art? Please tell us all of it.
I do. I have thomasperkinsart.com is where I have my art book.
And we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yes, we will.
And I'm on Instagram as TNPerkins4. And on Twitter, I believe, I try to keep it universal. TNPerkins4 on Twitter, or TNPerkins4art.
Also, if you follow me on Instagram, I put a lot of Thomas's art in my Instagram stories, so you'll probably see it soon.
Well,
We're so flattered. Thank you so much.
We are going to
Anytime.
make sure to share Thomas's Instagram account on our Geek History Lesson, because I love it when you do your heroes that are not quite the heroes. Like you see a version of Wolverine on there that's not quite Wolverine, but it's got your spin on it. I don't want to spoil it, but I love, and for a long time you were doing Legion of Superhero characters, which I love as a big Legion fan, which was so awesome.
When I was a kid, before I discovered the Marvel of the X-Men, I loved the Legion of Superheroes because they were this humongous, diverse cast of characters that could do everything. And so I always liked those guys quite a bit. So yeah, I started doing those as a fan art just for kicks.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Ashley, if they want to suggest future lessons and lists like this, where can they do it?
They can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's 1,000 ways to contact us in all of those places.
Don't forget to follow Ashley on Twitter at Ashley V. Robinson. Your Instagram is Ashley V. Robinson as well, correct?
Yes, because branding.
Yes, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin, because of branding as well. Mr. Randy Newman is not on Twitter. And let's go to the last section of the podcast. Hashtag stick around. Thomas, I would love to hear your opinion on this. This is, of course, the part where we make you stick through our plugs.
Yay!
Because advertising. Thomas, if you were to name what you think is the best scene or the best sequence from an animation perspective in a Pixar movie, do any of them jump to mind to you? From an animation perspective, I just love to hear your insight. Is there some sequence that us noobs don't understand or don't realize is so amazing from an animation perspective?
Oh, that's there's so many good. There's so many good things. I think for me, it's almost less about necessarily the technical aspect as it is the emotional thing it evokes. Mm-hmm. So for me, when we were talking about Incredibles 1, where the plane blows up, and they were able to hook me in with that, or there's the moment where in the Nemo movie where he there's that one egg left. Mm-hmm. And
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? No,
exactly.
You knew I was going there.
That big old octopus took everything else. But
although Pixar would kill a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie.
Dude, for sure.
But Finding Nemo is what we're talking about, of course.
For sure. Actually, if Pixar did their take on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with that Nemo.
Ooh.
Oh, all right.
Pixar's first R rating.
Hey, they always work on something different movie, right?
Yeah,
wow. In this movie, we're gonna perfect nipples.
And blood splatter.
Oh, so many things to learn.
That might happen in 20 years. Get ready.
I wouldn't put anything past it. That's interesting because as an uneducated person in the skill set of animation, I think in Finding Dory, the touch tank sequence where they're running from all of the kids' hands and you watch it through a filter of silt, I think is astonishing.
Oh, sure.
That you can give that level of obstruction, but it still narratively tells a story. I'm I don't know how you do that, but that's really cool.
No, but that's the thing about any of these given movies is there's so many things that when I was a kid just was impossible.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be a thing. So to pick the one thing, you're wow, because every time they do a movie, you're Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that's like I was looking at a clip from the Good Dinosaur actually before coming here, and I was looking at the water.
Yeah.
I was like, how do you? Because I worked on, I did development on the Starship Troopers cartoon, and as early in the CGI TV days, and there was just stuff they just couldn't do.
Yeah.
And they were hoping, the executives were hoping that, oh, well, this will make things easier because we build a model, boom, boom, boom. It'll cut down on expenses here and there, whatever. But they didn't realize that there's the limitations of, okay, well, but these things don't actually have physical mass. So you can't make a thing hit a thing. You have to like, figure out an algorithm so that it moves around the other thing or it'll just go straight through. And now they have stuff where if you weren't paying attention, you might think you're looking at a real thing.
Oh yeah, there's one of the Pixar shorts.
The one about the umbrellas?
The umbrellas in the rain. I remember, I think it was before Monsters University.
Yep.
And when they opened on the shot of the sidewalk in the rain, I thought it was a real shot. I thought it was a real sidewalk. And it wasn't until like the gutter smiled that I was like, whoa, oh my God. Like that one to me looks so photo real. And I bet you Pixar can do photo real.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I think they just, smartly, they decide to push back from reality because it makes the story better.
Well, and it's more fun to look at. It's more fun to look at the Incredibles in that lineup.
Yeah.
Than to look at, 5 people rendered realistically.
Well, let's face it, and this is the sad part as a comic book nerd, when you look at The Incredibles, one reason they work so great is you look dumb with your underwear outside your pants in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You hear that, Superman? I've been telling you for years, man.
Hey, I love my Superman, but if Superman walked in this house,
Yeah.
he's not real.
Look, I love Superman. Put your underwear on the inside, buddy.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
I am. Nope, the trunks go away.
I still like you though, and it's okay.
Go away.
We can still be friends. This is
Yeah.
the internet.
We can still be friends. Yeah. All right, that's such an interesting perspective. Thanks, man. All right, this has been Geek History Lesson. I have been Jason. I love Randy Newman Inman.
And I have been Ashley Victoria Robinson. And Randy Newman, how about you dismiss the class?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that, actually. Randy here, Oscar winner. I have several albums up on Amazon, and just feel free, browse through. Maybe you'll love Randy Newman too. Well, listen, it's a good song. Write that down. Hold on. I smell Oscar.